Well, the Space Marine chapter's faction focus is here, and despite my bias to not like the special snowflaking of these particular chapters, what is here is quite tasteful. So, let's take a look. For starters, we have definition that these chapters share the Oaths of Moment army rule with the other Space Marines, since they are not that different. But they are special enough to be represented with a detachment, featuring a detachment rule, enhancements, and stratagems. I would take this to mean all the other first founding chapters, which absolutely don't fight in any way that sets them apart, won't be receiving such detachments. It is what it is. And it's not outside the realm of possibility GW will want to sell us detachments in the future. It goes on to state any Space Marine army can use these special detachments, so long as certain restrictions are met, such as Black Templars not using librarians. This, I think, is good, as it prevents a rules for thee, not for me type of feel. Though it goes on to outline you can't use units with different chapter keywords in such detachments, citing non-Space Wolves named characters like Guilliman or Deathwing Terminators cannot be used in the Space Wolves Champions of Rust detachment. Though, it doesn't state if this works both ways, as in, can a Space Wolves player take their named characters like Ragnar Blackmane and play them in the Gladius Strike Force detachment? If so, things begin to skew a little more towards rules for thee, not for me. Anyways, first up are of course the Dark Angels. Their detachment rule is Grim Resolve, preventing the objective control of models and Dark Angels units which are battle shocked from dropping to 0. Ah, that feel when Grim Resolve circumvents battle shock better than Tyrannid Synapse. Jokes aside, the OC reduction is only one component of battle shock. You still can't use stratagems or ignore Desperate Escape. Though knowing battle shock will never deny you from holding an objective shouldn't be undervalued. Next we got a Deathwing Command Squad datasheet. Stats are in line with the standard Terminators. What's interesting for me are the Deathwing Champion, Ancient, and Apothecary are consolidated back into a group unit, and that this provides some insight towards the function of the not special chapters, Champions, Ancients, and Apothecaries. The Champion's weapon has precision, which gives him a pretty great exception in being able to target leaders while in combat. And surprisingly, the Apothecary's Narthesium brings back a destroyed model rather than granting feel no pains like we've seen with other medic-style models. So perhaps Apothecaries are being treated as a cut above the medic-style standard. The other question is, does that model which is brought back have its full wounds remaining? And the Ancient's banner provides 1 to objective control to all models in the unit, though I am unsure if this is a tool which also circumvents battle shock reducing a model's OC to 0, or if it only helps with controlling objectives while not battle shocked. And the Champion's ability gives the unit +1 to advance and charge rolls, and you can target this unit with the Heroic Intervention stratagem for 0 command points. And we see that Storm Shields now provide Terminators with +1 wound. We then get a look at the Lion. Let's have some fun and compare him with Guilliman. Their stat lines are right in line. Overall, I'd say the Hand of Dominion is a better ranged weapon, as range and volume are generally king. But Amma Luminous's Strength 8 and breaking the AP2 barrier are not insignificant thresholds. On the melee front, let's look at their sweeps. The Lion has more attacks with sustained hits, but Guilliman has Strength 8 with mortal wound potential. And comparing their strike profiles, both have lethal hits, but Lion has 1 more attack, but with worse strength. Surprisingly, they are fairly equivalent as it relates to their attack profiles. Looking at his abilities bottom up, Lion also has the same bodyguard lone operative ability. But the Emperor's Shield begins to push his combat potential more, giving attacks made against him -1 to wound, and resulting in saving throws of 6 against melee attacks, dealing a mortal wound back at the attacker, nicely simulating the parry and strike. And let's not forget the very significant 3-up invulnerable save compared to Guilliman's 4-up. And his activate 1 of 3 abilities in each command phase are All Secrets Revealed, allowing you to once per turn immediately gain 1 command point when the enemy uses a stratagem which targets a unit within 12 inches of the Lion, and that unit must take a battle shock test. If it fails, that unit is now battle shocked and the stratagem has no effect and its cost must still be paid, and the stratagem counts as having been used. A consistent gain for you, and a brutal penalty for the enemy, dice dependent, which is sure to discourage the ease at which they would use stratagems when close to the Lion. Martial Exemplar provides all units within 6 inches of Lion a +1 to hit with melee weapons. And No Hiding from the Watchers provides all units within 6 inches a feel no pain of 4+ against mortal wounds. And to further solidify him as the superlative combatant, he has the core abilities Fights First, plus the option to Deep Strike. Moving on to the Space Wolves, Their detachment rule is deeds worthy of a saga, and I gotta say, this is a much better route for them to go. Very flavorful. Essentially, at the end of a battle round, you can check to see if you've completed one of the sagas below in that particular battle round, and then claim its benefit until the end of the game. The list is largely pulled from their old warlord traits, and is structured similarly, requiring you to do something to get something. So no immediate benefit, but the wolves are known to enjoy playing in the snow, and so, snowballin' feels appropriate. The sagas are Warrior Born. If a Space Wolf's character slays an enemy character, melee weapons army-wide gain sustained hits 1. Majesty. If you control an objective in the enemy deployment zone at the end of either player's turn with a character, OC army-wide is improved by 1. Bear. If a character was reduced to half wounds or less but did not die, army-wide gain a 6-up feel no pain. Beastslayer. If a character destroyed a vehicle or monster, melee weapons army-wide gain lethal hits. We also get a Hounds of Mordkai datasheet. Now, I am doubtful how much of this will translate to standard Reavers, but at least the Hounds of Mordkai seem far more worthwhile. Bolt pistols have AP, and that potent anti-devastating wounds combo against Psychers. Wound rolls against them on a 4+ deal mortal wounds, and it has precision, and the combat knives they use have the same combination of abilities. On the ability front, the Hounds of Mordkai can scout move 6 inches, and in the shooting phase, they can literally howl at an enemy unit within 12 inches or 18 inches if led by a Reaver Lieutenant, forcing the target to take a battle shock test. And if the target is a Psyker, they must subtract 1 from that roll. And if it results in that unit becoming battle shocked until your next shooting phase, any psychic attacks made by that unit must subtract 1 from the hit roll. And they have a 6-up invuln to represent their wards, which is improved to a 4-up invulnerable save against psychic attacks. All said, it makes them quite the scary anti-psyker kill squad. Moving on to Blood Angels, their detachment rule is by comparison far simpler. Red Thirst gives your units which charged +1 strength and attacks with melee weapons. Funnily enough, we're back to the 8th edition World Eater's Legion trait, only when you charge. The Blood Angel unit preview is Death Company Intercessors. Stat-wise, their weapons performance seems likely to be equal to that of regular intercessors, though it is weird that the first intercessor datasheet we've seen are Death Company ones. What sticks out to me is the bolt rifles here are absent of abilities. Perhaps a typo or some qualitative difference for Death Company to represent their lessened discipline. On the ability front, they have Black Rage, which reduces their OC to 0 and denies being able to fall back when not within range of a chaplain. And Visions of Heresy allows you to once per turn target them with the Overwatch or Heroic Intervention stratagem for 0 command points, which makes them a very versatile reactive unit while being less disciplined than your standard intercessors. We then get a Gabriel Seth preview. On the back of his data card we can see what he can lead: Assault Squads, Command Squads, Tactical Squads, and Vanguard Veteran Squads. We can see Gabriel Seth still has his bad dude attitude, not wanting to party with Primaris. I'd also like to point out this design space also serves as an interesting power balancing mechanic, as it doesn't let just any character join any unit. Nifty. We also get definition on Gabriel Seth's usage, that while he is treated as a Blood Angels faction unit, he can only be fielded if there are no other Blood Angels epic heroes in your army. Looking at his stats, I'd say he's a highly competent melee combatant. 6 attacks with sustained hits, but really 7 on the charge, hitting on 2s at strength 8, or 9 on the charge, with AP2 dealing 3 damage. And he gives the unit he leads Advance and Charge, a big money value ability to be certain. And Whirlwind of Gore bumps up his melee attacks by 1 for every 5 enemy models within 6 inches, which adds a bit more spice. We then move on to Black Templars. Their detachment rule sees their Templar vows return. Overall, the options are better. Gone is that one busted army-wide invulnerable save, and the vows no longer require you to swallow a penalty. Nice. You simply choose a vow at the start of the first battle round. Suffer Not the Unclean to Live gives army-wide melee weapons lethal hits. Uphold the Honor of the Emperor gives an army-wide 6-up Feel No Pain and Leadership 5+. Abhor the Witch gives an army-wide 4-up invulnerable only to psychic attacks, and melee weapons gain anti-psyker 4+. And Accept Any Challenge gives army-wide melee weapons sustained hits 1. We then get a Sword Brethren datasheet. They appear to suitably have the veteran standard of attacks when comparing them to the Chaos Space Marines attack profile. Those mastercrafted power swords already look spicy. But then looking at their unique ability, Vow-Sworn Bladesman, lets you choose one of the following perks for the unit at the start of the fight phase: +1 attack or +1 damage. Tremendous. Black Templars are looking like a very flexible and potent melee specialist army. And lastly, we have the Deathwatch. Unsurprisingly, their detachment rule is mission tactics. In each command phase, you can select one of the mission tactics below to activate, which applies to all units in your army until your next command phase. Though, much like the Gladius Strike Force's combat doctrines, each can only be selected once. Führer gives sustained hits 1 to all weapons. Malleus gives lethal hits to all weapons, and Purgatus gives all critical hits scored by all weapons precision. The unit on preview for them are Deathwatch veterans. The Frag Cannon, now being a blast D3 attack weapon with rapid fire D3, dealing 2 damage, feels much more suitable as a heavy explosive volleying launcher. And the Heavy Thunderhammer, sitting at strength 10 with 3 damage, and Xenophase Blade no longer ignoring all invulns, but essentially being a power sword with devastating wounds, feels more tasteful as well. Their unique ability is Death to the Alien, which provides them reroll hit rolls of 1 whenever they make an attack. And if the enemy isn't Imperium or Chaos, meaning they're Xenos, they can reroll all of their hits. And under War Gear abilities, we can see their Storm Shields have become Astartes Shields, which gives the bearer a 4-up invulnerable save. And wowee, that was a long one. If you made it through, it's much appreciated. Like I said in the intro, I find what's here is overall pretty tasteful, though it's a preview split 5 ways, so I don't even think it's worth trying to score it. Whether you play a chapter that fights in a way that sets you apart or not, I want to hear from you. What did you think of this Angels of Death preview?